but do what we're talking about and do what they are teaching us to do. That's all I got. Be encouraged, Sandra. Hang in there. It'll be okay.
So this is the first time I've actually heard women. I've heard it before, but not to that level. I mean, just like a whole thread of just you know, bashing. I guess it just opened my eyes to the idea that, oh my God, like, in case you didn't think it was this bad already, like this is pretty bad. To actually see that the people were educated, I think that was the biggest thing. Like, what exactly is our education system good for if there are people that can walk away from the Stanfords and the UCR and, you know, whatever university is in your area and still come out with that level of ignorance? Our country is definitely in need of a major reform.
I just wanted to comment too. I find that social media has a lot to do with this, and social media definitely brain trashes a lot of women into thinking and acting in that, and or kind of reinforcing, you know, those kind of like narratives or that reality. I don't know what you want to call it. But I've also had, you know, the college graduate say to me, you know, that, you know, something along the lines of white men come to the black woman's aid more than black men do. You know, she said that and came out of her mouth, and she'll say that she's somebody that's concerned about racism. But, you know, I think social media plays a large role in brain trashing women.
That's the tool.
I agree 100%. I never saw so much bashing like that till I came to social media, especially YouTube. It's horrible. If the women are not blaming the men are blaming the women, and
Yeah.
both of them are non-white, and they saying it's a problem.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't have power, but until we unify and work together, we're not gonna get power.
Mm-hmm. I find a lot of black women also saying, you know, they believe that patriarchy is a thing, but then, you know, they'll turn around and say, you know, men benefit from that patriarchy, black men could benefit from that patriarchy. Then they don't understand that, you know, as non-white people, we don't have any power, so therefore black men they don't there's no such thing as like black male patriarchy. I have black women that have told me that black male patriarchy exists, and, you know, how can that exist under a system of racism and white supremacy? It doesn't. The only thing that's real is white male patriarchy, racism, white supremacy, you know. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to get to those people other than handing them the ISIS papers.
Yeah, and them having the ability to and will to finish the ICE papers without you know. Alrighty, everyone, welcome to the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller Jr., a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, white supremacy. Um, so my beginning question for everyone is, do they have any unjust or incorrect experiences that they can remember from the workplace environment or the area for in general?
Yes.
If you'd like to share it.
One of, well, I want to make sure that it falls within the guidelines, but you mean like unfair treatment in the system of racism, white supremacy, like discrimination, right?
Oh, we really like to use the terms unjust or incorrect because
Okay.
Unfair has and just fair in general has typically been associated with the word white.
Okay.
So yeah.
So unjust or incorrect treatment. My second job was at an ice cream shop, and I had a manager, non-white. He was Hispanic, and he had a friend, also Hispanic, that worked with him, their buddy. When they found out, they were trying to get at me, I guess. I tried to ask for a date type thing. And when they found out that I had a boyfriend, they also found out that my boyfriend was Black, because people like to ask questions that are none of their business. And when you're young, I guess you answer them and see where it goes, live and learn. They all of a sudden, treatment started to get different. This one of them treated me the same, but the one that was the manager in control of everything just took a completely different attitude toward me. And then I started to hear him use the N-word all of a sudden, when he would speak and everything. One of the things that I noted when he would use the N-word, one day I walked into the back and he was listening to The Game, African American rapper from LA. And I said, it's kind of interesting how you buy their music, support their communities, take what they have to offer, but you don't respect their culture. This is, that's how you talk about them. And not too long after that, I got set up and fired with no write-ups, but I didn't feel comfortable working there. And I didn't have a problem expressing that, if that's the kind of people that I'm dealing with, if that much is already coming out just upon them knowing that, what kinds of things do they do to other people, other victims, African American victims that they hire, how much they treat them, and just opened my eyes that people in the system of white supremacy, one of the biggest things that I notice when I sign to work anywhere is that they can let me go for any reason. And I think that that's one of the biggest tools, or one of the biggest rules that they have, where they can just keep manipulating their people with, not their people, I guess so. I mean, they think it's all their people, white supremacists, but manipulated with this rule, you can do anything you want. Like when they say you have rights, you have this, you have that. Well, you don't have the right to work. So what do you really have the right to? If you have to work in this system of white supremacy to get anything, and you really don't have the right to work, at the end of the day, they make the final call. And it seems like the people in the system of white supremacy are rewarded the more they practice white supremacy. Like, had I gone along with their, nonsense talk and used that word too, I'm sure I would have kept my job, but that doesn't feel right to me. And because that didn't feel right, I took a lost wage. I risked losing my car. I took a job that wasn't as, I didn't like as much as the job I was doing, and got stuck in it for 3 years because there was a recession. I had to work graveyard instead of regular days, just because me and the manager did not see eye to eye on something that should have had nothing to do with the job in the first place.
Dang. I think what you said reminds me that I was supposed to read this before I asked you guys that question. And the code says, as long as the system of white supremacy, racism exists, do not expect any job situation to be as it should be, conducted with justice and correctness. And it's funny that you are working amongst non-whites. If so-called Hispanics are non-whites. But yeah, even though you were working amongst a non-white, you still experience mistreatment and heard people specifically targeting Black people, which is to be expected in the system of white supremacy. Um, Or any of us like to share some incorrect job experiences, situations?
I have a couple, but I'll probably say one. Um, when I used to work at McDonald's, um, I had a lot of managers that didn't like me, but I mean, they didn't have a reason. They just didn't like me. And I remember one time I went in and I had went in early and the lady had a short register and I had to take over her register. But she was like, "This is my register and it's short." I said, "Okay." So I relieved her from her break. And the manager that was there was another manager that came in and she was telling her that that was my register. It was another girl's register. It was a Hispanic girl, but she was telling her that that was my register and that my register was short and she don't know why it was short. And I was like, no, it was the other lady. The lady told me her register was short. This is not my register. I came in and I relieved her from her break. And I was like, she was like, well, I wasn't here, so I don't know. I was like, well, if you just go fire me, then fire me because I'm not about to get blamed or I'm not about to pay money that I didn't lose for you to accuse me of something. Not even accuse me. You knew it was short, but you put it all on me instead of just taking the blame that when you counted it at first, the register was short and you gave it to the girl knowing it was short. And the girl told me it was short. So I guess I was working the register and it got really bad to the point where I guess one of the managers that was manager that was blaming me, her name was Alma. She said something smart under her breath, but the black lady that I was helping speak Spanish and cussed her out so bad in Spanish that all she could do was just sit there and be quiet. And so that black lady specifically told me, you need to leave. Like, you need to go. You can do better. So that's just one instant.
I could share next. I used to work at Chuck E. Cheese. And similar to kind of what Sandra was saying, I never, maybe I was just a happy slave or a good slave. You know, I was very young. It was my first job. So, you know, I was just happy to make some money. I often witnessed that the manager would, you know, hire these young girls a little bit older than me. I was probably like a senior or a junior in high school at the time. And he was always very flirtatious, very like touchy with them. He often would always, you know, set them up with, you know, the big families, the high paying families, the parties. Whereas, you know, me, I was, you know, relegated to the mouse. You know, I was Chucky, you know, the mouse. I often asked to be trained in other areas, you know, like the cash register or in the kitchen or in the game room. But I never got the opportunity to be trained in those areas. I would often be lied to. Uh, and when you know the I even posed the question because these you know these girls, so a lot of them were white, some of them were non-white. Uh, what you know for the parties, you know, I was like I said, I was a happy slave, so I played my role, and I brought and you know I threw on a party and I entertained, you know, so I knew that a lot of the reasons why these hosts, that's what they called them, were receiving the kind of tips that they were was because the party was good. So I asked, you know, hey, can I get some of those tips too? You know, I never got a response for that, and I never received any tips. I never received any kind of compensation. I was only, scheduled to come in on mainly Saturdays and Sundays, because that's when all the parties were. Fridays sometimes, not always. Um, so I was only working, a couple hours a week. But once again, I was very confused and just a happy slave. Um, Another incident was when I was working at a warehouse, uh, at a distribution center. I was in the shipping department, which I just, boxes would come down the line, and I was just to stack the boxes, stack up the walls, fill the trucks up. Um, it wasn't so much me, but I had got my brother to work there with me, and I definitely wasn't the best employee as far as like my pace and keeping up with when your lines start to fill up, lights start to come on, so that like lets everybody know that you're fucking up, basically. Sorry for my language. But for me, that was always happening. But when I got my brother a job there, he was more, he wasn't full time. He's, I guess, not part time, seasonal. He was seasonal, started out seasonal, and they ended up firing him basically for the same mistakes that I was making. I don't know why, because there were plenty of other people. There are plenty of other people struggling, with that position, doing those kind of tasks. I ended up staying there for how long, being unhappy, but just trying to make my way through school. Um, yeah, that's all I have to share right now.
One thing I would add, as far as like incorrect treatment on the job, one thing that comes to mind is if you're like a young black male in the workplace, sometimes they will uh, call you nicknames such as honey or sweetie, something like that. If you help them with something, say like "thank you, sweetie" or "thank you, honey" or something like that. Um, Even if you tell them your name, they will still do it. And my observation is if you try and correct them, they will do it more. But if you don't, sooner or later, they'll actually call you by your proper name. That's just my observation.
I want to share a time where incorrect things were happening in the workplace. So one of my first jobs was at a movie theater. It's called The Rave. And I was like Kweku said, like a pretty oblivious slave. Um, I didn't really understand race and white supremacy, and I really didn't think about racism all too much. And in that job, there was gay. There was like a two white gay employees, and they were one was not a manager, and one was a manager. But when as soon as promotion were up, the white person was promoted before all the black people. And then I hear from one of and I was a pretty a new employee there. I didn't really go there. When I started working there, everyone like had kind of been working there for like a year or so, and we're already buddy. So I didn't really talk too much. I really like tried to make friends there and nothing. I just kind of just swept and kept to myself. Um, but then one of my associates tells me that what this white employee said about you. He said that you seem like a kind of guy who has bodies under the floorboards. So they had spread a rumor that, or made some kind of joke against me that I was some kind of serial killer. when in reality I could point into history, Jeffrey Dahmer, who was a white homosexual who actually had bodies under the floorboards. So according to that logic, they're more likely to be a serial killer than myself. But I didn't respond that way. Actually, I didn't even let them know that I had received that information. I just thought, oh wow, that's funny that those people are saying that about me. But that's one time where incorrect, unjust thing was happening in the workplace. And the question, Mr. Williams, if you want to share, is just sharing an incorrect workplace or experience, labor experience.
Okay, now, you know, if I'm a senior, I've had a bunch, but we will only talk about two. Okay, when y'all talk about working for the fast food establishment, those are the prime ones where you will get the most unjust treatment from employers. And it's because it's high turnover, and they already know you're not going to be there long. And the ones that are there, they usually stealing, doing all kind of stuff. But anyway, I had a registered day home, but where I kept children in my home, but I had my enrollment had got low, so I said, okay, well, what I'll do, I'll just take me a little part time working for the fast food establishment. And when I was there, they hired me to be a cashier, which I had been a cashier years ago. But you know, these new cashiers are different than they were back then. So anyway, the manager, I was looking in the book on the labor, and he was talking about uh, being trained versus telling, right? And a lot of times they think they're training you, but they're telling you and you don't get it. So by me being a cashier, they wanted me to be able to work drive through, which is where you're going to get the most money anyway, right? If you work drive through. So they had me on front register. That wasn't going because I really wasn't being trained. They were telling me, but they weren't training me. So I couldn't grasp it. So they would laugh because I would, you know, have a problem with the error in what I'm typing in on the cash register. So the guy had got so bad. Now these are not white people, but he was the manager, and he was just assistant manager rather. He was so horrible in how he was treating me, and they were mocking me because I couldn't catch on. So he was out for like 3 days, and I was determined I was gonna learn that cash register. So by the time he got back, they say, "Guess what? Guess what?" And he say, "What? Miss William working the cash register, not drive through." He said, "Oh no, she not." He said, "Yes, she is." And he was so outdone to realize I had to teach myself how to work that drive through. And I was one of the best people on the drive through that they had. So they were always asking me, "Can you come to work? Can you come to work?" Okay. But anyway, what happened is I can understand what she was saying about registers coming up short. That's the reason why I've learned one thing about being a cashier: count your drawer before you get it. I don't care if they count it, you count it yourself to make sure it's what they say it is. And don't let nobody go in your drawer on your shift. If somebody else is going in your drawer while you're on that shift, then tell them I don't want the drawer. You know, because what's happening, they will steal from your drawer and then make it look like you're the one who was stealing. So it had got to the point every other day, there was a young lady, she was going to be a team lead, and they wanted me to be one. And I was kind of, you know, didn't want to take the position, but they really wanted me because I was more reliable. So every other day, she would check my register. Every other day, I'm short $2, $3. And I'm already knowing I don't steal. So my register is going to be over, because when people would say, "Well, that's all right about the change," I would literally just go ahead and leave the money in the cash register. So I knew I would be over, right? Every other day she checked it, it was short. I come to the conclusion, I said, okay, when she come this time and my register short, I'm quitting. So I did just that. My register was short. I went in there, wrote a nice little letter, and I put it on the chalkboard so they could see it when they come in there. And they said, well, Miss Williams, what you doing? Why you quitting? I say, my register clear today. Every other day is not clear. So I think I better cut my losses right now because somebody wants y'all to think I'm stealing, right? So fast food, that's if you can avoid it, stay away from them cash registers. Try to do anything but them cash registers because they will get you to get you fired and then label you as a thief. Then I had another incident where I was doing my registered day home work and not registered day home. I was working as a instructor at a beauty school that was near my home, right? I was so anxious to get that job because I only had to catch one bus. I could get there easily, and it was just perfect, right? But of course, you got non-white people who they give a position to, and I think the worst type that you deal with is when they are confused about their sexuality. And this was a young lady. She was confused about her sexuality and she was married to this lady and she wanted me to sit and hear about their endeavors. And I didn't want to hear that nonsense. So I would just say, oh, okay. And I walk away. Oh, well, I got to go do this. I walk away. So finally what she did, because they were trying to get rid of me, I had already was supposed to get a raise and I didn't get the raise, but I was still sticking around, right? Because, okay, they're going to give them a raise sooner or later. Didn't get the raise, but I stuck there anyway. But what got me is that you have to make up your mind with some of these jobs that, and I was to the point that when I got the job, I already knew to start saving money and putting money away, that I actually had my rent three months in advance, right? So I was cool. So when I got ready to make up my mind to leave, it was when um, the lady had put so much work, she wouldn't allowing the students to clean up behind themselves. And that's what they have to do as an instructor. She was an instructor. We both had the same license, right? Same identical license, right? And she thought that they were going to leave all that work for me to do. And I come to the conclusion when I came and I said, look, all of this work is still here. You need to tell your students to clean up behind themselves because my students are coming and they shouldn't have to clean up what your students left. Oh, okay, I'll tell them. All right. Come 5 o'clock, she ready to go. I said, excuse me, the kitchen is not clean and the floor is, I mean, it's dirty all over the place, restrooms, everything. She said, oh, well, I'm not feeling well. I'm gonna have to go home. I said, oh, okay. So I ain't made no better, no worse. I called to the front office and I say, look, I need someone to come to the salon and see what is going on here. She finally came down and she said, oh, well, Miss Williams, she gone home now. So I don't know who's going to clean it up. I said, well, let me tell you something. Go and tell your boss that Miss Williams say that she need her check because she's quitting. I already knew they can't give you your check when you're quitting, right? If they fire you, they got to have your check. But I knew that. But I wanted her to go and tell the woman I was quitting. So she went back and she said, oh, well, she say she can't give you your check, but you'd have to wait till the payday. I said, okay, but anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and pack my stuff because I'm leaving. She said, you're going home? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm going home to my house because people have a tendency to think people are crazy. And if they think you'll keep cleaning up and doing their work and yours, they'll keep putting it on you. But I already knew the situation didn't look right. So that's the reason why I kept saving money, paying rent in advance. So when I quit, I was still good. So that's something you might think about too. If you're in a position of a job and you know it doesn't seem like it's going to work out, put back your money, pay your rent up in advance. So that way, when you do have enough of them, at least you don't have to, feel like, you have to stay there because you really need their money. So that's my two experiences. Thank you.
I worked in the food service for 8 years, and that just sounded like every experience that, I mean, that's right on, that's spot on. The shorting of the drawers, I've seen people get let go over stuff that people have robbed in the middle of the night that had nothing to do with them. $2,000 gets robbed out of the safe, and they use someone else as a scapegoat, and there's all kinds of other nonsense involved in those jobs. Certain areas, though, in this system of white supremacy are dominated by food jobs. They're like in Walmart and things like that. Like there aren't many other jobs. Like I lived in kind of a middle of nowhere part of California where like food jobs were pretty much the highest paying jobs in the area. So they were looked at in more prestige. Like we didn't have high turnover. And sometimes that was unfortunate because like people that came to work drunk could still come to work drunk. And me as a shift manager would have to deal with the fact that they would just allow it because like these people are kind of grandfathered in. Like they worked there for 2 years and it's the best they can do sometimes. So yeah, not a good field to be in if you can avoid, but I'm sure that many other fields just have their own way of slipping nonsense in there, their professional way. But very insightful. It's interesting to me because
Yeah, thanks, Miss Williams. That was very insightful. Did anyone else have any comments about anyone said or anyone like to share? I will like um I really like these bullet points. I think they're really important. So I would like if we read the bullet points from pages 132 to 134, if that's okay with everyone. Because I think
Great bullet points. Yes.
okay, so I'm gonna start, and then when I start,
I would suggest maybe we share our favorite ones. There's a lot of bullet points.
yeah, that's a great suggestion as well. Oh, would you like to start?
Yeah. For me, some of the ones that I highlight. Well, I'll share two. I highlighted avoid all unnecessary and all non-constructive conversations. Say only what is necessary to be of constructive help to self or others. And the last one, which was avoid talking. This is probably my favorite one. Avoid talking directly about racism, and or sex unless others mention such matters directly to you. Choose to focus on talking about the production of justice as the reason for anything and everything that you say or do. I don't want to go on and read the rest of it, but if I could comment real quick on that one particularly, and I would like anybody else to comment as well. For me, that one, I found that most recently, especially, trying to talk about racism and in talking about the production of justice, I find myself using, race and racism, and that instantly like turning people off, instantly like turning people like again, I guess almost against me. You know how people just it's like taboo to talk about that kind of stuff. So I thought it was very, very constructive value to rather than speak about ending racism, talk about producing justice, because
Mm-hmm.
I feel that is a little bit easier for people to swallow and would ultimately, produce a more constructive result.
Yeah, I agree. This is my second time reading this area, and I don't know if this one's just totally slipped my mind, but if I had kept this bullet point in mind, that would have been very constructive and doing what I want to do, which is help to produce justice. But now I definitely attempt to just um, yeah, don't just justice. I don't even like to use the racism hashtag anymore on social media. I just put justice because that should be the focus, and people should be interested in. And if not, people aren't interested in a race problem, they should be interested in justice if they haven't been that brain trashed by the system.
Yeah, because when you start talking about racism, it's like I don't. It's like everyone assumes that's like Black people's problem, especially like most of all. But when you start talking about justice, I think everyone can agree that that's like their responsibility to produce. Even white people. I also like the always be courteous one. And I said I was only gonna share two, but that was another one. The one not above it, but the one above that one. You know, always call people by the name or title that they were asked or expect you to call them. Always say only that, which will be of the most constructive value. Avoid trivial or argumentative conversations. Practice not saying anything when a person makes threats or hostile statements. Avoid making statements. That's a good one. Focus only on answering questions briefly and with maximum courtesy. I'd like to get into this more, but I want other people to share.
You would like to comment on the bullets that Quaker
Um,
just read? Or share
When
their
you
own?
when you're doing your bullets, please, can you tell us what page you're on so we can follow along with you, that we don't go back and say the ones you've already said?
Yes, thank you. The last one I read, the last two that I read were on page 134.
Okay.
It was the last one and the third one, the third from last, or the third on that page.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'll just keep going. Feel free to interrupt me whenever. I find myself, especially, at meetings now, and, just when people ask me questions, I tend to talk too much. I start saying things that nobody asked me to say or asked me about. It's just, I don't know what it is. I like to think I'm not a chatterbox, but maybe I am. It's just, I don't, it goes back to, keeping things constructive, right? Not having any kind of unnecessary non-constructive conversation. Somebody might ask me, like, I was in a meeting and people tend to get off topic a lot, and this is where I can get more codified. They'll ask me questions off topic, like, oh, do you play video games still? And rather, I say no, but then I'll go into why I don't play video games. Like, nobody asked me that, so why, why am I talking still? Why am I still saying, minimize conflict by minimizing contact, avoid unnecessary and non-constructive interaction with anyone. And that's exactly that too, like, we only came here for a meeting. We came here to discuss the issue at hand. I should get in the habit of not making people feel comfortable, or even, I don't want to talk about anything apart from this. Let's not get into what I like, what I do on my free time. We're only here to discuss this problem.
yeah, because they'll use it against you.
Most
A lot of people that would use other co-workers against each other. But I told them that's the problem. You come to work to run your mouth and have conversations, and these are not your friends, these are your coworkers. So treat it as such and conduct yourself. You came here for a reason, and that's the reason you should be focused on. So that's why nobody couldn't use anything against me, because I didn't have small talk with everybody. I don't want to talk to you because I feel like you're gonna turn it back on me in some kind of way. And so, no, I'd just rather you not know me at all.
Definitely. Yeah, I see like the workplace being, a lot of the jobs that I've had, I see the workplace being like an extension of high school, and high school,
Yes.
it's just drama for no reason. Everybody's upset, for over nothing. You go home, you don't see these people again, just like high school. You can go home, you won't see these people, after everything's said and done. You might never ever talk to these people again, but finding something to be upset about, finding something to nitpick about, I noticed that early on. So I always tend, not be a part of the drama or start drama, I guess you could call it. I definitely didn't want to encourage that or add to it. I always tried to keep to myself. But, apart from what I just mentioned, every once in a while, me going on as a chatterbox, which I need to stop.
So I guess I'll share a bullet point. Discuss, page 133.
Mhm.
Discuss but do not argue and do not shout. This is in the second one on there, easy to find. Do not under any circumstance name, call, curse, or threaten to do bodily harm to anyone. The reason why I think this is important is because just like when you talk too low, people can't hear you. When you talk too loud, people don't want to listen. So you gotta fall somewhere in between those two extremes, because otherwise nothing's gonna happen. You might think it's happening because you're loud, but all that's happening is you're using up extra energy and the person next to you has checked out of the conversation. So I think it's important how you relay a message, because the same words said a certain way cannot be listened to and won't cause the same change as if it were said with the right gestures or right intentions. With that being said, I myself have a loud, natural voice that people mistake for yelling. So there's a good there's a good chance that if I said something important and I didn't think about how to make it sound all soft and cute for these people's, feelings, I guess, that they wouldn't listen to me because they would think that I was yelling at them. I experienced this at work a lot when I would say, like, I need to get a burger because they didn't give it to me on time and the person was waiting for it. They would like get mad at me for yelling at them when it was like kind of a part of the job, because my voice was actually louder than other people's voices. So when I yelled, it sounded like I was like psycho probably. So I think that people need to take a bit of a step back from their emotions when things are being said to them and possibly consider the words that are being said. But since many people can't, it is best to try and keep the tone down and definitely not name call, because once you name call people, they just either shut down or start name calling back, and that can't solve anything. I agree with most of these, but I felt like I could go into more detail about that one. So that's mine.
I see the bullet point on 133 on the top. It's be courteous at all times, be helpful, speak slowly and softly and with constructive thought, but do not expect others to do the same. I was part of like when everybody was new, I would have to train, and I'll train them to the point where I'll be there with them. I'll show them the ropes and actually demonstrate to them what they need to do. And I did in such a way where it wasn't like how other jobs, they'll just throw you to the wolves and you got to figure it out. I will just actually be there to help. And I was always talking to them in a tone where, they respect how I was talking to them. As opposed to everybody else, of course, everybody's not the same. They're going to talk to you. They're going to say it real fast, or they don't have time or the patience to kind of train you. So you just kind of got to figure the ropes out on your own. And, when you at least get a person that wants to help you, take that as an advantage, because in most jobs, people don't want to help you.
They're in fear that you're going to take their job if you can do it better than them.
Oh yeah, I had a girl like that when I worked at McDonald's, but I told her, why would I want to get paid the same rate you get paid just to do more work? Like, no, I'm not going to do more work because the general manager wanted me to be a manager within 3 months. But I told her I didn't want to be a manager. So the girl would try to give me like a rough, tough time. And I'm just like, I don't want your job and you're still going to be manager and it's going to be okay.
A bullet point I really am going to practice is do not, is also a 133. It's like the fourth one down. And it says, do not talk about sex, sexual intercourse, sexual play, and or homosexual or lesbian anti-sex in a manner that is non-constructive or unnecessary. When others do so, listen and say in a soft, courteous manner. That's interesting, and say nothing else. Um, so I've learned, like a lot of the things, Black people have been trained to do, anti-sexual, counter-sexual behavior is one of many of them. So it should be treated as such. It's something to, like anything that's not constructive. It shouldn't probably be discussed or be the topic of discussion um, very often, unless it's going to be constructive.
Exactly. I too like the fact that he said that's interesting and say nothing else. Now, for some reason, as non-white people, we have a tendency to think anytime somebody says something to us, we got to give them a long explanation on what they just said to us to reply. But I really like that. I'm sort of practicing that. That's interesting. But the bullet point that I like is that on 133 as well, and it says, always be where you promised that you would be at the time you promised and doing what you promised. Do not mistreat anyone at any time for any reason. Do not steal anything at any time for any reason. And I like those points to pull out because so many times when we are on a job, um, we watch when we see other people who are already working there, some of the behaviors that they do, and we think, okay, well, they say, well, I steal all the time. And well, won't you want to take something? Oh, no, thank you. Because to me, I always felt that I would go to jail. That's just my constant fear, if I was to steal. So I wouldn't, right? But I at the time, well, most time when I was on my job working, I was still in Christianity. And I'm not bashing nobody who in Christianity. I'm just telling you my personal experience, how I saw that. And there was a scripture in the Bible that talks about a servant is worth his hire, right? So that means if I work, I have a right to be compensated fairly for what I'm doing. So whenever I took a job, I had that mindset that I've agreed to work for this amount of money. And if I'm going to work here, I'm going to do the best job I know how to do. I mean, wasn't so much trying to outwork anybody. That's just my work ethics. My grandmother used to say when we were children, she'd say, don't do something twice when you can do it right the first time. And that was my motto. I don't like to go back and repeat something that I could have did right the first time. So that was a part of my job ethics, that when I was working, I always wanted to do a good job, always. And a lot of times it made animosity with other people that worked there because they think, oh, you're trying to get the boss's attention on this, that, and the other. And they didn't understand that's just the way I am, period. If the company had been mine, I still would have worked the same identical way. That's just me. But everybody's work ethic is not suitable, and a lot of times it can cause more problems. So I just wanted to, bring that out because good work ethic is important, even if we're in the system of racism, white supremacy. Your work ethic speaks about you. It tells people your characteristics as a person.
Yes, thank you for that, Miss Williams. I personally am one that I highlight that one as well. Always be where you promised that you would be at the time you promised and doing what you promised. For me, that just says being on time, and that's something that for whatever reason, I felt like, oh, I'm not gonna be at this job for long, so I don't really care, or what do these people think they're doing? Like it's not that serious. Like I'm gonna get there when I get there or something. Not saying I show up whenever, but I'm definitely not the first person to show up, and I definitely am not the first person to stay longer. Definitely not going to show up early. I've tended to like to show up just on time, but oftentimes that can lead to being late. So I think so yeah, thank you for that. The work ethic too. I think that that's because that kind of attitude and that kind of mindset has crept into other areas of my life to where I have people waiting on me, or I'm taking too long and I have other people waiting for me. So it's definitely something that I'm working on. And this, for me, this whole thing was just, ways to be more codified. I think that's definitely one of them.
I was gonna add too the on that always be where you're promised. Um, that was a good point because I know like on pretty much like every plantation I've been on, I've always been on time. I know on one plantation, like a few years ago, I when I left the job, I got a letter of recommendation from the supervisor, and it's saying thank you for a good job, and for the whole year that you worked here, you had perfect attendance and were always on time. So yeah, definitely that point on always be where you promise.
Well said. I like this one as well, where it says also a 133. It's like the third one from the bottom, where it says do your best to learn everything that you can, including learning how to do the work and put it to use in a manner that will likely produce a constructive result. Be willing to help others do the same. It's not. It's very rare for me to see people being told to go out and attempt to help people and learn new things. And this is something I attempt to do: learn new things and help people. I hope. I think also another one, which is on 133. It says, "Do not pretend to have power that you do not have. Be realistic. Tell yourself the truth at all times. When needed, direct others to seek answers to their questions by asking those people who have the most power to answer the most questions." Very, very important for Black people in particularly to understand like their position currently on planet Earth is being one of powerless and to do what a powerless people should do in this time.
Another good one is on page 134. The second bullet, it says, always thank people for whatever you say or do that helps to produce justice or correction, balance between people, creatures, and things. Always be courteous. I always call people by their names. We had mentioned that before, but to me, courtesy goes a long way. And 0526, I have to give you your prompts on that. You always say thank you. And that's important because sometimes people will get the impression, oh, well, I'm not appreciated or I'm not even considered. But when you use the word thank you or show reference of gratitude for the people helping you to do a particular thing, it'll take you far, much farther than not just assuming that they know that you thank them. But it's just good to say thank you. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you for that comment. Thank you for your participation. I have to read from 137 because it's very, very important, and I think we all can relate to what I'm going to share relating to this. And the code says, if while doing a job you are told that you are not doing it enough, or that you are too slow, ask for a prolonged demonstration of how the job should be done, and ask for the demonstration to be done by a large number of people for a substantial period of time. Ask for the three T's of teaching, which are telling, training, and testing. Explanation. Telling means to be told and shown by demonstration what to do and how to do it. Training means to do what you are being told again and again and shown by a person telling you and showing you what to do and how to do it, making certain that you can do it as others can and are doing. Testing means to make certain that you can at any time do what you were trained to do, thus proving that you are trained to do what you were told to do. And this is really important code because it reminds me when I was like 18. I got this internship where I was I believe I was just expected to do stuff that I had no training and no experience of how to do it. And my boss, she was a she was a black female, and she would just berate me and a team because like we were it was like a nonprofit, and we were she would just have these random assignments whenever we went into work. It was nothing like um everything it was nothing like planned or scheduled. It was like our task was different every day. So one day she would be like, okay, I need you to run out and like go get like donations and grants from places. And I'm 18. I'm like, how am I supposed to go out and do this? She's like, just go to like places and like ask for grants and like figure it out. And then when I was never successful at many of the tasks I was given, she would berate me and just make me feel like I was like getting paid for nothing. To the point where like, I was like, wow, I wanted to jump out this window right here because I believe working like some kind of high rise in downtown, and it stressed me out so much that she would berate me. I would just be thinking about jumping out out of the window, and I was 18 at the time, so there's the amount of stress that victims experience in these workplace environments can be described as such. Contemplating doing something like that. I laugh at it now because it's so insane, but like most victims, I have to laugh from going insane or crying. You don't have anything from the text from Nicole you'd like to share?
Man, I have a little experience that this text reminded me of. Um, I worked this job once, and they kept saying that I wasn't doing a good enough job and that I was too slow, and they wouldn't give me like any kind of direction as to what time I needed to meet or how I was too slow. It was just put downs. And one day I asked them, I'm like, okay, so how fast am I going when I check out the items? It was checking out at a warehouse, checking out items like a grocery store. How fast am I going? And how fast do I need to go? And they said, we can't tell you that, just go faster. And it's just like almost as if like I was set up or something to fail, because it's like, if you're not going to train me or give me any kind of idea, and it looks to me, no one's complaining I'm going too slow, that's a customer, that's but it seems like that's a common game that is played on us in the job. And when I was younger, I didn't realize like there are other people I worked with that said, I never have that problem. That never happens to me. And I mean, I think a lot of them are in denial, and a lot of the other ones were just basically, for lack of a better word, kissing butt, to get things the way that they wanted with those bosses. So it's interesting. It's also, I've seen bosses hire people that were white and like attach all of these great characteristics to them before even knowing them. Like, oh, this is a reliable guy. This guy would never steal. And it's like, well, what tells you that? He makes just, I mean, he's from the same situation all the rest of us are, and like they never would answer. It would always just be like, praising the white person, but not really having a reason why, just because they were in front of them, basically.
Yeah, so that's the importance of asking questions and remembering the three T's because Had I known those three T's, all of us known these three T's, a lot of our workplace experiences would have been like a lot more constructive, I believe, especially myself regarding the story I just told about my experience.
Yeah, I'm kind of experiencing something like that now. I guess I haven't. I'm in a position now where I haven't really been trained, and I'm learning everything myself. Uh, Hopefully, I'm not going to be tested on anything on any of this stuff because I was never trained in any of it. But I guess I would have to get back to that. Um, as far I did work in that warehouse for a couple of years, and like I did mention, I was struggling. I'm still trying to figure out whether I was trained properly and tested. I mean, I was never fired, but I constantly did struggle. And, I did have numerous meetings about like my productivity, and there was even times where the supervisor would come out and watch me watch me. I shouldn't laugh. It's not correct. But he would watch me do my job, and I would do it, and then I don't know. When he was gone, it seemed like everything else it just went back to where I was struggling again. And it doesn't make any sense to me because I would actively wonder why I just can't do this job the way it's supposed to be done. You know, it's not like I was, trying to sabotage myself. It's not like I wasn't able to do it. I just couldn't do it. So it's like constantly working with like anxiety. So going to they're probably gonna here they come again to come tell me something.
Yeah, that sounds very, very common in the system. Um, yeah, I feel like all of well, the majority of my jobs, I've been poorly trained for them, and I've always have had to either fake the funk or actually learn how to do what I was supposed to be doing. But now that you're in the position to practice code, do you think you would be attempting to be trained further in your job?
Was that a question for me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Oh, now that you're reading this section, do you think you're gonna have more tools to help you in your workplace?
Oh, most definitely. As soon as I read this chapter, I started applying it as soon as I read it. I had another meeting today, much more codified. You know, well, I'm practicing, still learning, right? Kept talking and unnecessarily sometimes, but I'm still practicing that. Um, I definitely this whole chapter has been very useful, and I don't think I'll be as confused in workplace situations anymore. And I mean, on page 141, I really like that request to delay signature. I thought that was just brilliant. I've never thought like, oh, I don't have to sign this right now because it doesn't make sense to me, right? Even if I do read through it, it still doesn't make sense to me. Well, why don't I have? Is it possible for me to have time to think this over before I sign it? Or, something so serious I'm having to sign it right now because this is the difference between me having a job and not having a job right now. If I sign this piece of paper, you know. So I thought that this whole area of activity was very just numerous tools for me to use.
Agreed. I really appreciate this part from 144 because it's like the importance of logic versus emotions and feelings. And I'm sure emotions and feelings are very important. But I don't know. I've seen emotions and feelings just like really, really be not useful for Black people or a lot of enjoyment of my life, which is why I'm like probably it's a bit easier for me to like not um involve my emotions and feelings a lot. And as I become less confused, I'm able to use logic more as well, which is super important if we're actually going to be serious about trying to solve this problem, I believe. So 144, it says the code says a skilled white supremacist usually knows exactly what a non-white person is thinking about. They usually know what to do, say, what to do or say to a non-white person or about a non-white person, the things that will make that white person be calm, be sad, be happy, or be ferociously angry. All of these reactions are designed to be for the benefit of the system of white supremacy, racism. The white supremacists make a precise study of a non white person's strengths and weaknesses. They usually make sure that they know more about that non white person than a non white person will ever know about them, the white supremacist racists. The white supremacists are usually the masters in the science of getting a non white person to talk about his or her personal feelings in regards to any or all topics in the 9 areas of people activity. They usually are the masters of getting non-white people to do things out of emotion rather than the use of logic. So very, very important part. It reminds me of college applications because that's like a really prime examples of for me particularly where like you divulge a lot of personal information and you don't think that it's like a big deal, but we understand white supremacy you can see that as a really refined way of white people getting information about you with ease under the guise of it like helping you, but when you go to these so-called educate institutions you're brain trash further and introduced to various mind poisons and material poisons.
That is true, especially when like you're in middle school and they tell you to write about your life or just things you've been through. Those are things that they can use against you. Or if you have like a white person as a worker, or if like some people have people that have to help them, they indulge more into your business. And that's where you got to be careful within those fine lines of them being in your business because those are just tools that they can use against you.
Mhm.
When I was in school, I remember there was a test at the end of the year, and I always did pretty well on tests, but not this one. It was a writing test, and my mom was so surprised that I would get like a I think it was a 60 equivalent of a 60% on one of my best subjects. But when she asked the teacher what it was about, it had asked me to write about a vacation that I have been on, and the paper was almost empty because I had never been on a vacation. The reason why I got a low score was because I didn't feel right writing about something that never happened. And I couldn't really grasp or imagine, what a vacation, what a trip to Yosemite or whatever they were talking about would feel like. And I started to talk about like going to Disneyland because that was the closest I came to a vacation was like those 2 times, which I know is something, a lot of people don't get that, but I guess most of the people in the class had more money because they had been like to places out of the country and out of the state, actual vacations. And they got better grades just because they were able to write about something that, only existed due to their privilege in the system of white supremacy. So I think that's an interesting thing. that was brought up, you know, they could use it against you directly. And I think that like this example is kind of like indirectly, where it's like, if you don't have any money, you're not really going to have much to write about now, are you? And now everyone's going to be alerted, like, hey, this person has never been on a vacation, which, you know, as a kid, it's not that big of a deal. It's just like, oh, it's a bad grade. But I think as you get older, you realize that that bad grade kind of sticks as a deficiency. As you get older in life, it turns into, I don't have any money.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, with the college statements and stuff like that, it's like almost training yourself to be pitied, and like Sandra said, not having money. I know it's why even ask questions like that? What relevance does that have to me getting like a higher getting what relevance does that have for my education? What relevance does it have for me getting a degree or anything? I think it goes back to what O5 was saying, and just divulging information, so that they know more about you than you do about them. I never really thought about it until you guys were sharing right now.
Yeah, and I like the suggestions that comes with that piece, which are stop being on automatic, which is in support of the system of white supremacy, racism. Be a keen observer of what others are doing and saying, listening to others, but always try to say no more than is necessary. When speaking, always do your best to put everything you say in the form of a question. Make a record of the answers you receive. Be calm, take notes, never express anger or use profanity towards other. Always think, and think again before speaking, writing, and or acting. Number 5 is one I really need to write somewhere down and just have that plastered, because that's a super important one. And yes, you can minimize a lot of conflict by minimizing contact, but if one is to follow number 5, I think that would be a huge way to also minimize conflict, and which is just to really think about the things we're gonna be saying and doing. You know.
While you were saying that, the third one was it the third one? When speaking, always do your best to put everything you say in the form of a question. Make a record of the answers you receive. So I have an example of how I was actively using this today. I work as a substitute teacher, or I used to work as a substitute teacher. Well, I'm still employed as, and I had gone to these trainings to administer these tests, and I since we had been working from home, there's a whole new way we have to do our payroll now and submit our timesheets. I had submitted some timesheets back in December, for sick days, just because I had them and I'd submitted them. And it's now March, so I emailed them like, "Hey, when am I going to get paid for those trainings that I did, and when will I be getting paid for the sick days that I submitted back in December?" And they emailed me back saying, "Did you email us those, or did you email those to me, or did you email them to somebody else? And I only have you down for 1 day for the training." So I was thinking. I went back and pulled up all my receipts because I had the email and everything that I sent, and I, I asked a question. I didn't make any statements. I asked a question. Did you receive this email that I sent you? And it was, sent to her in December. I forwarded her the email that I sent her in December with her name on it and everything. So I asked her, "Did you receive this email that I sent you?" And then she replied back saying, "Oh, being remote and everything, our emails are bound to drop, but just give me the runaround. So, and I asked her about the trainings as well. Does this person know anything about this? Because I was the trainings were supposed to be 2 days, but they had agreed to extend the first day and pay us overtime for it. So we wouldn't have to do 2 days. And so I CC'd the other person on the email, and does this person know about this, about the day and a half that we were supposed to do for the overtime? I'm trying to get better at asking my questions, but just a way that, you know, rather than making statements, I was just asking more questions.
Yeah, thank you, Kwaku, for that epic example of how you're using code, trying to practice code, staying in question lane, you know, which is one of the closest ways we can come to having power, is being the ones asking the questions, especially in the workplace. So another question I have is from the 10 types of administrative subversion and support of incorrect government. Does anyone have want to share a particular experience from working from dealing with one of these incorrect administrations, whether it's the administrative brutality, administrative harassment, administrative royalism, administrative sabotage, administrative slavery, administrative terrorism, administrative espionage, administrative detention and or dislocation without compensation, administrative waste, fraud, deception, and or theft. Um, I've definitely have experienced administrative dislocation without compensation um, when my home was taken by the government. Racist suspects for sure. Um, Administrative slavery. I think I'm considered property by the system of white supremacy. I think that's an ongoing thing that I'm always experiencing. Administrative terrorism. Um, yeah, I think I'm terrorized by this system 24/7, and I think it also is attempting to intimidate and harass me 24/7. By making me seem to be a crazy person by wanting to talk about this problem and solve the problem to people who look like me, but are much more confused than me, unfortunately. And I could definitely go on forever talking about each of these incorrect administrations, but I'll give air for other people to share.
Oh, I'd like to add on the one that's administrative detention and or dislocation without compensation. For that one, what comes to mind is how often victims usually have to travel a long distance for a quality job, um, like possibly up to an hour. I remember on a past job, just for me to get a full-time job, I had to travel an hour away because I couldn't get one in the city where I live. And I was at that job for quite some time, about 3 years before I got to where like I am now. I got a plantation much closer to my prison cell. But I remember I was going back and forth until a racist suspect crashed into my car, and he totaled both of our vehicles out. And the area law, the law enforcement showed up on the scene, gave the racist child a slap on the wrist. Don't do this again. You totaled the Negro's car and yours, but you don't have to pay for it or anything like that. And that made me think of the part without compensation, because then I had no car to get to the job, and I was pretty much forced to go to a vehicle dealership, and I only had one vehicle I could pick, and I hate this car to this day because it's just like whatever. And yeah, I almost lost my job because a racist suspect crashed into me. But yeah, without compensation. That's all I got for right now.
Yeah, that was thank you for that, Dan. I didn't even think about it like that, because I often had to commute for 4 or 5 plus years to go to work, and all because I couldn't find decent work in the city that I lived in. And commuting's terrible. I mean, I hated it, and I still hate it. And it's honestly like very dangerous, because I would, my shift was from 3 to 11, and it's not that late, but after, working 8 hours, physical labor, you get tired, and, driving back, you know, I used to get real sleepy. And so I had to pick between, pulling over and, closing my eyes for 20 minutes, or driving, just 15 more minutes, and thankfully I made it all the times, but that's definitely something that I don't want to do again. And I didn't think of it in that sense. So thank you for that. Kind of clarified it for me.
Yeah, Dan. Your story definitely also sounds like it could be administrative sabotage, which Kweku's story also makes me reminds me that the entire system is like a administrative sabotage, which the code says is any willful and or deliberate speech action in let me start over. Administrative sabotage is any willful and or deliberate speech, action, or inaction, including writing, recordings, etc., that intentionally causes or promotes the damage of property or of procedure so as to obstruct constructive activity or to hinder just or correct functioning similar to acts committed by enemy agents against people or against the supportive environment of people in war or in warlike circumstances. It is also any deceptively destructive effort to defeat or do harm to a person, creature, and or endeavor through deliberate subversion based on malice and or greed. So I'm also was one who had to travel very long distances for not even the best jobs, just any job. I feel like every job I had to go out of my way to first get the job and to also you know keep the job. And I just thought is oh this is just what the so-called grind, what the so-called rat race what is how I conditioned myself back in the day to just tolerate poor working decisions. Oh, this is part of the rat race. I'm just stuck in the rat race. And then I just use that as a way to teach myself it's not something I wanted to be stuck in forever. But then I realized, oh, this is not just a rat race. This is a race war. White people have started. So unless I don't want to live in this race war, we actually have to produce justice, or else I will be living in this race war forever, which is worse than the rat race because it affects me when I leave my so-called job. But thankfully, right now, I'm not working in a traditional sense, so I'm not having to deal with a lot of workplace racism. But I'm happy to have this code, so when I do find myself back in the working field, I'll have this knowledge and will be able to protect myself from the many of subversions, acts of subversion, brutality that may come my way. So anyone else want to share anything regarding the 10 incorrect forms of government?
I've, I can think of a lot of things that could fall under these, but I'm gonna give an example of. I think that in some of the jobs that I've worked, an example of administrative sabotage, I believe one of the things I saw is somebody, a Black employee asked for change and they were denied change and told to put it back in their pocket. The camera then basically, was watching them put it in their pocket, and they, like most people, forgot because I guess customers gave them change as hours went by, and they forgot, and When they got home, they called immediately, said they were sorry, and said that they were willing to return it. But the company said, we got you on camera. There's nothing you can do now. Almost as if it were a setup. The second quick example I'm going to give is actually, scare me. When I was pregnant and working for a job, there was a manager that would scream at me, even though she knew I was pregnant because you could see me showing. And she would do it to the point where like I would get nervous, sometimes get dizzy because like my baby would react to, things like that. And it would I'd be scared when I went to work often because I had a baby growing inside me and the people at work just didn't care. There were other people, there was someone else at work that actually quit because of the structure of the workplace because they thought if they would treat somebody that was pregnant that way, like why, what else could they do? But I'm sure that stuff like this goes on with so many different people, even though I wasn't there with them. And it's very scary that, that is the system of white supremacy can have those things set up either through their direct organizations or just through the spirit that runs through the people that have been shorthanded in life that are forced to work as slaves in those organizations that use the people around them, as how do you say it? Control. They use controlling other people as a means of, getting by in life.
Thank you. That sounds good.
Yeah, I had an example, but I'm not really sure where it falls under this. At one of my jobs, I was working there as like while I was in school, so I was only working part-time. And they wouldn't often ask me, but I let them know I was working part-time. So I mean I was in school, so that's why I wanted to work part-time. And all of a sudden when I graduated, the supervisor approaches me and tells me that I have to change my schedule to full-time. I have to change my schedule to full-time, and he didn't, really give me a reason why other than I graduated, but they never informed me that I would have to change my schedule. Um, so I'm not sure. I felt that, I was being deceived because obviously, the last thing I want to do is work there for 40 hours a week when it's 40 minutes to an hour away from me. So I'm not sure where that goes. I suspect maybe administrative deceit or deception or administrative intimidation. Um, just because I didn't expect that, and it made me very irritated when they told me that because now I had to think about what I was going to do next. So yeah, and that was for me, but I'm not sure where that goes.
I would say it goes under administrative slavery as well. And also, it seems like it could also fall under administrative espionage if you didn't tell them that you graduated, if they found out through some other means that you graduated, which is could be interesting. Which brings me to this point. I think it's really important to understand that we're always under administrative espionage, whether we probably whether we're in a workplace or not, which is and it's on 146, and it's administrative espionage. It's any willful and or deliberate act of keeping a person under surveillance of hostile or harmful intent rather than a helpful intent towards that person without the person having knowledge that he or she is under surveillance and or without being told that told the reason for the surveillance spying. You know, racist suspect Edward Snowden had to leave the concept of America because he told us that, yeah, government is definitely always watching and spying on us. So something to be aware of. So best not forget racist man, racist woman have their ways of finding out information and observing what they want to observe.
I wanted to share a couple of points, please.
Oh, please do.
Okay, one point I wanted to share is on page 135 at the very top. It says, be willing to do any kind of work that is constructive if such work helps you to learn how to do things that can be used to produce justice and correctness. Learn how to make constructive work that you do fun and make all fun into work that is constructive. It says, be willing to teach others who are in need of everything that you know about any constructive work that you know how to do. Think of ways to make a non-constructive work situation into a constructive work situation. Start with small changes that will result in the completion of a larger plan. Study ways to work smart rather than work hard. That reminded me of a situation where I was working. I used to work for a Head Start program, and a part of our job as child development associates, we were to do lesson plans, and we taught 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, right? And they furnished the facility furnished us a library for the teachers, right? And it was right there in the classroom. And if anyone know about lesson planning, it's hard enough to do that lesson plan, but it makes it easier if you have resources. But when the resources are all scattered and all jumbled up, you can't find what you need because you got to go through everything because it's jumbled, because people were just putting books back, you know, not in any certain order, whatever. So I decided, instead of sitting around waiting, watching the clock, like a lot of people, they call it riding the clock. I never believed in that. I was always thinking if you were busy doing something, time would go faster. So I decided that I would organize the library, because I was going, trying to do lesson plans, and I couldn't figure out where half the stuff was. But I took time and I organized the library. It took me 2 days to do it, but each day I would go and work on it until I got it done. And I didn't do that for recognition. I did it because it would make my job easier. When I got a chance to do my lesson planning, right, it will make it much easier. So to me, that's working smarter and not harder, because you don't want things all jumbled up, where it's not organized. So that's another thing that we can learn about having jobs that you want to do. See, a lot of people, they pick careers and they really don't like their jobs. And to me, that don't make any sense. Why do a job that you don't like? Because you're not going to want to go. But I found if you pick a career of something that you really like doing, it's not work. It's really fun. They just paying you to have fun. That was my motto. And then another point I wanted to share was on page 140. And it says, when you believe that you should say something about mistreatment in and on job or other situation, make one or more of the following statements to the person who may be involved in causing the mistreatment. And the example, it says, sir or ma'am, my job is to help you to help me, and for both of us to do 2 things. One, guarantee that the smartest person here uses all of his or her knowledge to guarantee that no person here is mistreated. 2, guaranteeing that the smartest person here uses all of his or her knowledge to guarantee that the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help, unless I have been misinformed. And it goes on to explaining why you need to say those things. It says every person in the known universe is born needing help. In all situations, the person who needs help the most should get the most constructive help. No person should ever be mistreated. It is the job of every person in the known universe to guarantee that no person is mistreated. It is the job of the smartest person in any situation to guarantee that not so smart, the smart less person is given the most help and guarantee that no person is being mistreated, and that the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, great pieces from the code. Thanks for reading those. Definitely something I need to hammer in my mind.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to share this part on 140 where it says avoid at all times using the words gripe, grievance, or complaint to describe anything that you say or write when you're not satisfied with something that is said or done by others. Instead, try to use the word report. Um, he also goes on to talk about not talking about like your complaints with people. Something that I could probably get better at doing, just because I don't want to say, well, no, I do complain about work conditions sometimes, and this and that, but I don't really know. I wonder what he means by use it as a report, right? Like, then he kind of goes into it, but how would I report a complaint?
well,
I think he's using the word report as it's sounding better, because now from when I remember working, I remember them having a form that was a grievance form. So, but it is actually really a report. So I think it's a twist of words, words that sound better and more less offensive than saying a grievance or a gripe.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think more people will be interested in listening to like a report than like a complaint or a grievance. But I saw that you unmuted, Mr. Edwards. Do you have something to add?
No, well, nobody wants to be known as a complainer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Every time we hold this meeting where people can voice their complaints, this person always has multiple complaints. See, that person is a complainer. So the objective is to use a more constructive term and not just quote unquote complain, but also provide a solution in the process of the problem you're presenting. That's all I wanted to add.
Yep. And thanks for that, Mr. Edwards. And when making a report, it's always important to remember the three I's, which is inquiry, investigation, and indictment. And to remember that the code says avoid making accusations either directly or indirectly. Avoid making statements that are likely to be thought of as criticisms or complaints. It is extremely important to focus on the correct process and give maximum attention to all of the factors. So the inquiry, which is probably the most important one, which is like just ask about the procedure for investigating all of the details about what was done or not done, by whom and for what reason. Ask, inquired as someone who was authorized to do so to find the truth about something that was said to have happened that should not have happened, and why. Report, but do not accuse. Report, but do not gripe or complain. Report only something that may have happened that shouldn't have happened. Avoid reporting, saying, writing, etc. Anything else and the report. Limit what you write. Say only that which is necessary. Do not say anything that is not true. And whatever you write, always put it in the form of a question. Avoid making statements. And then there you have it. The importance of reporting versus complaining, and how to make a constructive report.
Oh yeah, that's one of those things they get us with all the time, you know, and we provide the information that they want us to provide. There are times when people will, you know, make a report about something that has taken place, right? And the response will be, well, who did that? Who did that? And then we'll give them the person's name. See, right off the bat, you're in the indictment lane, not the inquiry lane. Just as soon as you name a person, you have skipped past inquiry, skipped past investigation, and gone straight into indictment. So unless you really practice that, you know, it's difficult to stay in the inquiry lane. And once you start practicing it, you'll see yourself, you know. I've even been invited to some meetings, summoned to others, you know. And the first question I ask is this an inquiry? Is this an inquiry? Or is this an investigation? They say, well, it's an investigation. Well, the FBI is not here. You know, who's the investigative authority here? You know, so you really you can't just feel your way through that. You really got to think your way through that to make sure that you're in the lane that you want to be in, the lane that you need to be in when you're going through those various scenarios on the job.
Well said. So, when you've asked about who are the investigators, what has your response been?
Oh, they'll name Bob from another different department and what have you. And I said, okay, what are your investigative credentials? Can you please present those before the members of this meeting? And, and 9 times out of 10, the person don't have any. One of the things that I've done, when being summoned in a situation like that, is I find out who is going to be the person in the meeting with the most authority. And on a couple of different occasions, I have invited that person's manager to attend the meeting as a silent witness. See, this is when things get really, really sticky for you. This is not to be done like, if somebody's trying to find out who ate up all the popcorn, in the cafeteria, when things get really sticky for you. And so I would invite that person's manager as a silent witness. Now, as a silent witness, I tell them what their requirements are. Number one, they can't say nothing. Number two, they and observe the meeting proceedings. They're allowed to take notes after the meeting. They're allowed to send emails or make phone calls or whatever, but during that meeting, they can't say anything. You want to see a meeting go by the book? In that particular situation, I mean, everybody is extremely courteous, extremely. And they follow the company guide step by step. And it doesn't take long. And that works to your benefit, because then you can ask questions about company policy as it relates to other laws. You know, if you're really in a sticky situation, I've been in quite a few.
Thanks for that really great piece of advice. Anyone else have anything from Area 4 labor they'd like to share? Anything I think we should cover?
I'd like to add on page 134, this at the very bottom of the page, this note is specifically for males. Males, when in situations on the job where you often interact with a female, inform her of the following. If at any time I say anything to you, do anything in your presence, or say anything about you that you find offensive or unpleasant, please tell me. This is one piece of code that I use when interacting with females, white or non-white, on the job, or just talking to them on one-on-one, because that's definitely a good point, just to protect yourself, because especially like when you're on the job, and you have to assist a female alone or something, you just have to be careful. And then one thing that I do is like if there's one coming to my office with a question or something, I keep them in the hallway. I don't let them in the office if I'm in there by myself. So yeah, that point on 134.
Agree, also very important. Yeah, especially as I recount my workplace experiences, it's just like they're always just so trashy and tacky by how the coworkers just sexually mingle with each other, and it just causes a lot of problem. Like when I started when I started working at a particular workplace, when I got there, there's already a lot of mistreatment happening due to what coworkers were having sex with um, with each other and whatnot. So yeah, very great piece of code. I don't know if it's mentioned, but maybe it should be also in that code to avoid flirtatious conversations, all that kind of behavior. But that probably falls into the avoid all non-constructive conversation.
Yeah, I often think, also too, what constitutes a job? I think we're all on a job right now trying to produce justice. So I felt like a lot of this you could use it every day of your life.
Yep, agreed. Does anyone have any more notes they wanted to share? Should we get to closing?
Oh, one other thing too. On page 136, number 12, make a written record of those things that you see or hear that may be of use to you in the future in solving problems and or in helping you to protect yourself or others from incorrect accusations. For that point right there, this is a good one to use in area 4 on the job or in the workplace, especially if you have like an email or something. Take advantage of that. Print out critical emails, are very important ones. Just stack them up in a binder, save them on a thumb drive, because you never know when you might, be let go from that plantation. You can keep that as your evidence, I would say.
Yeah. As soon as I started reading this portion last year, and I saw the importance of taking notes of when you're in the workplace, of when you're being mistreated, and just taking notes of everything, reporting everything in your some kind of log could definitely save you in the future. For sure.
Yeah, this part in particular, I when I shared that story about the emails and for my sub job, I was like, damn, I wish I had told her to put extending the day and a half. I wish I had told her to put that down in writing. right? Rather than just, saying it. So I would have had that proof, you know. So this is very constructive. Thanks for sharing, Dan.
Okay, I think we can move into closing comments. Anyone like to start?
I'll start.
Oh, go ahead, Cruz.
Um, Reading the area of labor was very insightful because eventually I'm gonna go back to work this year. And since it's been like 3 years since I've been working, not working, I'm kind of like terrified to jump into the workforce again. But this area made me feel more prepared of the things that I need to do, things that I can use, and what I do need to use, and what I need to keep doing. I read this area with my child's father because he's going to through things at work, and it was just more insightful and helpful for him to keep being on code and always try to produce justice while being mistreated inside your job. So this area was makes me more positive when I walk back into the field.
Yeah, I feel like this is thanks for sharing, Chris. I feel like this is a great like tool set. Just as one area is a great tool set that one can apply for the job, even for in education as well, and in their just daily existence. Um, my best one is the one about always thinking before you say something. Something I'm sure we all have to work on a lot more, especially myself. Um, yeah, and just engaging in certain conversations. I'm definitely gonna be like what Christine said earlier, just saying, "Oh, that's interesting," a lot more, and not really caring to engage in a lot of.
First of all, you already do that a lot. If you notice that, you say, "Oh, that's interesting," or "interesting." You just gotta do a little. I mean, you do it a lot though, but that's why that was funny when she said it because you do that a lot already.
You gotta do more.
Mm-hmm. Never too much. I found this chapter very, very insightful. I wished I had knew about this when I was working. It would have saved me a little grief. But knowing that this chapter is here, I would suggest that anybody seeking employment who are already employed, it would only help you to become a better employee rather. But at the same time, you realize you're in the system of racism and white supremacy, but it gives you survival tools to be able to use while you in the workplace. And it'll help you maintain. So I'm glad that I got a chance to look at that, and I shall refer this to people who are looking for jobs. They always have these workshops about job preparedness and what do you need to do when you go to a job and this and that. They need to include all of this whole chapter, because it would really, I think it would really make it the employment more stable, because you go in having knowledge, because most of us have very little knowledge about what to expect when we get in the labor force. So this is very constructive. Thank you.
I think the passage is or the chapter is constructive, similar to what one person said. I've been out of the workforce for 4 years, actually out of the workforce due to working too much in the workforce and not compensated for it. So I've been going over a lot of these experiences and similar experiences that we've been talking about kind of in my head for years, and trying to figure out ways to solve it should it happen again, which it probably will in a lot of cases. Better ways to respond to this abuse, because obviously from what I can see, it's, you know, in the system of white supremacy, it isn't probably going to go away anytime soon, but we have to learn how to respond to it to begin to solve the problem. And I feel like years of hearing so much of this stuff one day is kind of made me sick, because I had all these anxieties and insecurities that didn't exist before I went into the workforce. I even went to therapy, and they always tried to attach stuff to my childhood, but more of it happened when I got into the workforce, because they controlled my money. And it was the only thing that could break me. If you threaten my money, then you threaten my existence. And if you threaten my existence, and especially if I have a child to support, that's going to affect me mentally. And I didn't really understand how powerful the card was that was being played on me until I had to take a step back from the workforce and make myself better, and then go over a lot of the experiences and talk to other people, some that shared similar experiences, to understand what I didn't understand then and what I can begin to understand in the future, to not only support myself, but help uplift other people in the future. I have to first be able to understand how to navigate around, acknowledge that it does exist, that there is something sick that's going on. The passage is very clearly laid out to me that it's not in my head, it's not something I should feel guilty for, it's more something that I should act on, not to get caught up in my feelings about it, and to focus on the solution, not the problem.
And I would add, in regards to this section, when reading this section, you might, say to yourself, well, I already do, quite a few of these things, like the always be where you promise, and that you would be in at the time you promise, and doing what you promise on page 133. But there's a lot of stuff in here that you can use, like the 3 I's, the inquiry, investigation, and indictment, and then the 3 T's, telling, training, and testing. But yeah, there's definitely a lot that someone can use from this section. If they can't read any other section, just read this one and you can apply it like right away on the job.
For my closing comments, for me, I called in and asked about the racial shadow boxing. That was a good little reply. If you haven't listened to it on the YouTube yet, I encourage you to look for it. I wanted to read this last section. All victims are equal servants to the racist. All are weak. All are fearful. No non-white person can justly blame the other. No victim is justly qualified to name call and or denounce any other non-white person because of his or her submission to and or cooperation with racist man and racist woman. Each non-white person does his or her part in direct or indirect support of the system of white supremacy. Area 4, labor, very insightful. I'm glad that I was able to get my hands on this sooner rather than later, and a lot of very constructive tools that to be implemented in my life as I become more codified and I attempt to practice counter racism. Thank you, everybody, for the constructive conversation.
Alrighty, thanks everyone for sharing. Was that
Thank you.
Mr. Everett? Would you like to have closing comments
No, I suppose so. I wasn't able to, say much during this session. There's a lot I could have said, but the session probably would have lasted for 6 hours. So, but if anyone's interested, I wrote a book about some of my experiences on the job and what I do to neutralize racism, white supremacy on the job. If anyone's interested,
Are you able to put that in the chat? Sorry to cut you off.
say again.
So are you able to put the name of the book in the chat or share it?
Yeah, no. Well, I'm not at a computer. I'm on my phone. So, and I dialed in. But yeah, I'll share it. The name of the book is How to Support and Defend the United States Constitution for Victims of Racism and White Supremacy. So anyone wants a free copy of that book, just send me an email and with an address that I can mail it. I think I got about 10 copies
Well, I
in
sure
my house
want
right
one.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want one.
I'm emailing you now.
Yes, send everybody's
Hopefully you-
email to it.
Please.
Hopefully you'll have a post office box, and don't send me your home address.
My post office
yeah.
box.
I trust. I don't care if you have my address. The most dangerous people have my address. So
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, anyone
Okay.
can find out they want to.
Alrighty, I'm gonna end it there. All right, so for the let's decide the pages for next week.
We should do all law.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
law
down.
is very short.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, okay, let's do all. I like that recommendation. Chris, epic. All right, so I'll see everyone next week. Thanks for
Ooh, politics is long though.
Definitely.
All right. Have a good one, you guys.
You too. Thank you.
maintain well, continue learning.
Thank you.
Good night.
Produce justice.
In our lifetime, let's do it.
I want to, Dan, are you still there? I want to ask you some questions.